I'm back. So I feel a little Terminator-ish in my Google glasses, and I hope you'll all put up with me for a moment. I am the most unsavvy tech person you could possibly imagine, but here I am in my Google glasses. Actually, I'm thrilled that we have a great partnership with Google. We've been doing a lot of work with them to get arts advocates together through Google Hangouts, and I hope you've all had a chance to go to the Imaginarium and sample these Google glasses and meet with the folks there. It's really great. So I am going to attempt to take a picture of you all with my Google glasses. Remember, I said I am the least tech-savvy person in the room. So bear with me a sec, okay? I've got very specific steps. I'm going to tap. Okay, glass. Take a picture. Okay, glass. Share this with Google plus NAMP. Now I'm going to take off my glasses. We are done with that part. Woo! Okay, thank you very much. That was very, very stressful. You have no idea. But good afternoon. I hope you all having a really great conference. What a terrific reception we had last night. Thanks to Camille Russell Love. I learned some really interesting dance moves, which I am not willing to share with you today on that dance floor, but Terrence McFarland, man, you rock. Yep. Before I begin, I just want to remind you all that this session is being webcast live, which is great. So it gives us an opportunity to engage people who couldn't be with us. We're going to take some of their questions online as well. I get the opportunity today to introduce you all to somebody who is spectacular. We are so fortunate to have Elizabeth STREB here, and I cannot wait to hear everything she has to say. She's a one-of-a-kind artist. Her dance is at once awe-inspiring and powerful. I love that she was once called the Evel Knievel of dance. And her choreography, which she calls POPACTION, is described as combining the disciplines of dance, athletics. Oh, look at you all. Look at you. That is truly remarkable for so many reasons. I just want you all to know. Wow, that's great. Thank you all, the tech team, for making that happen too. And Megan from Google, we couldn't have done it without you. Thank you. So let me get back to Elizabeth, because again, I'm sort of like nervous to be introducing sort of such an icon. So her work really combines dance, athletics, boxing, rodeo, the circus, and Hollywood stunt work. The result is completely unique, like nothing you've ever seen before. She's the recipient of the 1997 John D. and Catherine T. MacArthur Foundation Genius Award. She's the subject of the 2014 documentary Born to Fly, Elizabeth STREB versus Gravity. She's directed by Catherine Gunn. It premiered at South by Southwest, which really tells you the kind of audiences that are interested in her work. In 2010, Feminist Press published her book, STREB, How to Become an Extreme Action Hero, something I would like to know how to do. She's going to be signing that book after this session, so I hope you get a chance to connect with her and get that book signed. In 2003, Elizabeth established SLAM. That's the STREB Lab for Action Mechanics in Brooklyn, New York. Now, SLAM's garage doors are always open for the community to come in to watch rehearsals, to take classes, and to learn how to fly. Over the course of 2 decades, she has performed in theaters large and small and served as artist in residence in some of the world's top art museums, including Los Angeles' MoCA, the Wexner Center in Columbus, and the Walker Art Center in Minneapolis. In 2011, the STREB company performed sold-out shows at the Park Avenue Armory in New York City and the Whitney Museum of American Art's downtown groundbreaking space. If you've not had a chance to go there, it's really quite amazing. She is a current member of the New York City Mayor's Cultural Affairs Advisory Commission, so they get to hear from her often about what they should be doing. In 2012, STREB was commissioned by the London Organizing Committee of the Olympic and Paralympic Games and the Mayor of London to participate in the London Festival. So on this one day, from dawn to midnight, STREB dancers performed 7 action events across major London landmarks, including the Millennium Bridge, Trafalgar Square, and ending with the human eye, where 32 daring STREB action heroes performed a spoke dance on the towering, iconic landmark of the London Eye. I told you she was incredible, so please join me in welcoming the amazing Elizabeth STREB.
You're the best. Thank you very much. Oh my God. Hi, everyone. I was actually wondering, I have two mics because that's the way I am. One here, one here. I'm so honored that Americans for the Arts has asked me to talk to all of you today and to really have a chance to share with you, all of you, a lot of the things we've all been working on, like how does action art get into the world? How do we really break the rules? Because the ones that are established just don't work anymore. And of course, we all know when you do that, a lot of people get pretty upset. And they're people we know and love. Oh, I used this clicker. So talk about branding. This is STREB, which you might think is my name. But actually, it's a brand that stands for strength, trust, risk, energy, and body. And a long time ago, I realized I don't want to be called the Elizabeth STREB Dance Company. I want to be able to have people glance at the marquee and recognize an image, not have to read something. Who has time to read something anymore? I love that you had this printed on your brochure. The future requires action. I was just thinking, well, finally, somebody believes that the idea of what you do can take such predominance over actually what you say. It was really a cigar box full of bolts and nuts that was falling off my parents' counter shelf. And I planned it all out and caught it an inch from the floor with nothing falling out. But somehow I knew that movement and hardware was going to be my future. I mean, that was 8 and I'm 62 and I'm still waking up wondering about movement. So I'm happy about that. My objective was to puncture the skyline of London in a way that people would not believe, be surprised about, happen upon, and also remember for their whole lives. It would somehow change their sense of wonder or what they thought was possible. First, I had to walk around London for 6 months to a year and choose the sites and get permission for the sites. They had to close the river, close the bridges. So it took a long time to get those permissions, which was a large part of how we were able to do what we're doing right now. One of the predominant things that STREB does that no other physical form does, in my opinion, except for boxing and American football, is not camouflage gravity. So we deal with a lot of impact training. You also have to be able to be a spherical dancer. You have to know where you are when you're not on the bottoms of your feet right side up. So what if, after all the dance training that we do, I've started over these 40 years to start to comprehend, especially after the Olympics, that, oh my gosh, does it really matter what they're doing on the London Eye? No one can see them. They're the size of an ant. But the significance, and I worked and thought about this for 2 years leading up to that, what if the significance of where you are perturbs the heart and the mind of an accidental passerby? And the other aspect of the Olympics is that we were not allowed contractually to say anything about where, what, or when. And if you're a performing arts company, you're sort of like, well, I battled that. I kept talking to my producer. Our producers were the London Olympics Committee and also the Mayor of London. And I said, I don't want to be on the Millennium Bridge at 7:30 in the morning and have 5 camera people there. Please don't do this to me. And they were absolutely unmovable. They were not going to change their minds. The notion, this is the Park Avenue Armory that Mara, and thank you for that really beautiful introduction. I never expected I was going to get a little upstaged by Google Glass. but I forgive you. So we decided the Park Avenue Armory is a drill hall. If some of you, it's in New York City, and it's just this massive space. And one of the preemptions to feeling I could do the London Olympics and be on all those sites was I had to experiment with, okay, I have 800 people, a show on both sides of this lane that went on for 300 feet with all of these different actions in it and a lot of projections. And I thought, okay, well, what is it going to mean when somebody's 200 feet away from the spinning ladder and they're looking there? Why will that matter? What's the relevance of that? And how do you figure out how to frame the action you're doing? Because I always get upset by prosceniums because they're so insistently the same. And the audience is stuck like you are now in your seat with only a single angle of viewing. And then also, since I couldn't advertise this, not the Armory, but what I was leading up to, then what does it mean? And this is all about an audience gathering, which we're all completely obsessed with. What does it mean when the people who will actually witness this are just walking by accidentally? Like when we did the Millennium Bridge in the morning of July 15th, and the whole Olympic thing was called One Extraordinary Day. When we did that, it was 7:30 in the morning, and there were probably only 100, 200 people there. We weren't even allowed to say, oh, the next one's going to be us walking down City Hall. So the exercise I went through, I mean, they had a great PR firm, but the exercise I went through was completely baffling. Like I was guessing. Why would it matter? Can I stop you? Can I take you out of your day and get you to watch what we're doing as the day went on? And it was just the people that happened to be walking, in South Bank and walking by what we were doing. So that was, now I'm completely ruined for the theater on a certain level. But just so you all know, we do go into theaters. So don't count me out. But now what you just saw, all of this, we have a stadium show. We're going to be at the Barclays Center, which is, that big thing in Brooklyn. Next September, and this show will go into that. And also we are doing Cities of the World in 2016, 2017, and we have the Forces show. So I have 3 things to sell. And I really like that. But my company has told me I can't make anything new anymore until I get our money back. That was a short way of saying that. Here's a trailer for the movie.
Action mechanics, we experiment with the idea of extreme action.
More force, more velocity, more risk.
I think my original belief and desire is to see a human being fly.
Watch that fly!
We were really in touch with how to keep ourselves safe.
I think you have to get beyond the barrier of self-protection before you can really fly.
I believed that I could do anything.
Part of the deal is you walk into the room and you agree to get hurt. You might get a little hurt.
It's like being invincible, and then suddenly, just one time.
You would have never thought that that moment was going to cause such an injury, but it did.
She wanted something bigger.
I was scared out of my wits. Don't hit the bridge.
There is magic. It doesn't exist everywhere. So you do have to catch it when it comes. You can't ignore it. You do need to believe in it.
Doesn't sound safe.
Anything that's too safe is not action.
Don't you agree with me? Right? But when you think of normal dance, and I'm not saying anything bad about normal dance, well, I am a little bit, but the fact is, we don't think this is dance. We think this is extreme action, and the fact is that I walk into dance studios when we're on tour and I'm thinking, wow, you still have a hardwood floor. You still have mirrors. Like, we're supposed to be moving. And when I first took my first dance class, which happened to be in college when I was 17, they'd say, okay, well, check your line as you're going across the floor. And I'd say, well, do you want me to stop and check my line? Or my line, or am I supposed to move and look in the mirror? And they were like, what are you talking about? I'm like, well, I can't really move and look at myself. And I thought to this day, what a really good question. They just were perturbed by my annoying question. And also, how can you count when you're moving? How can you possibly count? And the notion of acceleration and the notion of what happens when forces slightly out of your control, which for me is the drama of action, start to wail against your body because you've put yourself into an untoward space that is unhabitual and foreign. And that's where actual vocabulary comes from. What if we're trying to find the rhythm of action and we're trying to locate, well, what's the iambic pentameter of action? Not poetry, not music, I was talking to Clay, and he was talking that prior to being with Americans for the Arts, he was thinking about memory and knowing that if you see something, like an image or something, that you can never forget, which was our agenda at the London Olympics. I want you to see this and go like that. And for the rest of your life, my job, and I'm not saying I accomplished it because I'm 64 and I'm not dead yet, and I don't know who saw it in London, but if you tell your grandchildren about, no, it's not like an hour show or a 2-hour show in a theater with fancy everything. I walked down the Thames, by the Thames, and I saw these people on the London Eye. We're walking down City Hall. Like, what's the imagery and the rhythm of extreme action so that it can actually grab the attention of audiences without begging them to come into a room and be quiet and leave the stuff of life at the door? You know that the bumblebee is not aerodynamically designed to fly. Now, you probably all know that. And then you see that it is flying, and I think that there's something so profound about that. This is our forces show. If you should ever want to bring it to your town, this comes in a 53-foot truck, pulls up to your loading dock. We load it in very rapidly, I don't know, a day and a half. And then we do this show. And the earlier slide had to do with hardware and the invention of action hardware. And I really make the analogy that orchestras have hardware. I don't really see why action shouldn't. And I think the bigger question is, does the body, all alone in space, the biomechanical body, solely have the capacity to call a message, to develop content, all by itself? It's always medium speed. The forces are within a technique. You don't go up. If we think pitch is altitude, you don't disappear. And you do this odd thing, which is step, step, leap to get off the stage. And I've always wondered, where are you going? Don't you just rethink that? And an amazing, one of my mentors, although most of my mentors, I stalked them and they didn't know that I considered them my mentors, was Lucinda Childs, who sort of doesn't do the postmodern thing in New York anymore. She went to Paris to design operas, but she would do this thing. I almost think only I noticed, but I'm a little obnoxious like that. And when her dancers were done doing what they were doing on stage, it was extremely geometric. You wanted to cry. It was so honest mathematically. Very fast. Minimal vocabulary, kind of petit allegro. But the way they passed each other was impossible. And you just couldn't take your eye off the stage. But when they were done doing that passage or whatnot, they would stand like this. And just look out, and sometimes they'd stand like this. And out of that, I got, the back as subject. The front as subject, the side, subject. And the strength of their personhoods just standing there was just so alarming to me, and it was so breaking the rules, because when you're done doing what you're doing, get off the stage. And from then on, we basically never leave the stage. We like to be out there because we have things to do. So this is just, you know, a lot of where I got my formal set of principles came from other literature, not so much modern dance, not music, but this apparently was incorrect, the manner in which Le Corbusier tried to assess and establish the actual proportionality of the human body. He also thought there could be a spatial harmonics, you know, the way music has, architecture has it on some level. How does it affect the space when you're moving in it? And my dream would be that, let's say, we're doing a piece right here, and there's this sort of empty, abstract space. Like in other fields, you name every square, cubicle, millimeter in that space. You would have a name for it, the way music has names for tones, and names for intervals, and names for keys. Not that I can sing on key. But everything is named, it has a nomenclature. And I keep thinking, well, how are you going to perceive, and this is the bigger question, because we do things and people watch, how will you ever perceive where I am, which is a critical idea, when it just, you know, it's just perceptually very hard to hum the action when you leave, because you can't even remember it. And I really believe that it's not the nature of action that you can't remember it. It's the fact that we've either hesitated or have not developed a more rigorous system for naming those spots in space. And also, what happens when the body goes through those spots in space.
I got this feeling on a summer day when you
Okay, everybody dance, come on.
coming to the bridge, I watched, I let it burn. I threw your shit into a bag, I pushed it down the stairs.
Oh, come on, is this a great song?
I don't care, I love it, I don't care.
I think it's more the I don't care that I like than. Because now, even though we've said forever, music is a true enemy of dance, I've always said that. I said it to Alberta Arthurs way back in my early 30s, and she was the head of the Rockefeller Foundation. Is that true, Ellen? And she had a daughter I taught her at Harvard when we were teaching dance at Harvard. And I went to a reception at NIFA, and she said, oh, my son is a composer. And out of my mouth came, because I thought, oh, I can't have this conversation. I've got 40 more years left, hopefully, in my career, and I can't have this conversation. So I said to her, and she's elegant, brilliant, and you know, she was my student's mother, and she was the head of the Rockefeller Foundation, but out of my mouth came, music is a true enemy of dance, Alberta. And then things like the Fibonacci number or the golden mean, what does that mean? That someone invented and noticed this idea of perfect proportionality. When you walk into the Park Avenue Armory, the scary thing is that Tony, you're doing such a great job. Can we give him a hand? Because I make these presentations, but I just plow music in there, and I don't set the level, and sometimes I don't talk, and sometimes I do, and he's just doing that on his very own. So the idea that when you walk into the Park Avenue Armory, also I was riddled with fear, because when you walk in there, that is the golden mean. That is perfect. And so, when I designed that set in there, which was way more money than we had, oh, we need one more truss, it's got to go up to 100 feet, but I sat in the dressing room, and when people walked in and just looked at, you know, one truss like this, the next one a little higher and wider, the up one goes the other way, and then da-da-da-da, I could hear the people walking in go, oh, like that. And then, of course, we had to do the show, so. This is tip, and it has about a 12-foot radius, and I felt that it was a perfect arc. For a long, long time, I've been trying to figure out, like, space is not so confounding to me. I understand space. I think I do anyway, because there it is, we're in it. But time is truly the most invisible, disappearing notion. And even if you ask a physicist like Lisa Randall at Harvard, could you define time for me? I just want to know what this is. You know, Einstein said space-time, they go together. But at certain points when you're moving, that doesn't actually make sense, that they're the same. And she said, well, you can't, well, she's a particle physicist, which I always find it interesting. They're also cosmologists. I said, well, how do you have time to do both? You know, it's a very, 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 very little, or so bit. I've just been focusing on one puny thing for my whole life. And she said, well, I can't talk about time. You know, there's a problem with the minus sign. I really think that's the most beautiful sentence I have ever heard. I feel there's a problem with a lot of minus signs. So how do we think different? You know, how do we dislodge our brains to operating in the work that we do in the same way? How do we try something? And a lot of times these kind of cone-like riddles I collect, because this, I should give you, this was actually researched. I didn't measure the chameleon's tongue. No, is that not? Yes, can you believe that? And I think, well, if a chameleon can do that, and that insect doesn't know the tongue is coming, can we go that fast? Can we be that surprising? Can our event on stage be so unpredictable, it's similar to a great novel that you just have to stay up and keep turning the pages? So I collect these and try and figure out, that's a very interesting sentence. Could I make up a sentence like that? So switching to where we do what we do. So this is a map of Williamsburg. We moved in Williamsburg, Brooklyn. There's one in Virginia, right? Not that one, but. And I went over there. You know, I was an early settler in Soho. I think of myself as a real estate maven, kind of. Mostly for all the wrong reasons. So if you happen to be into real estate, don't listen to me. But when we got into the loft in 1977 in Soho, I made a whole studio. It was completely infested with rats. That was not the good part of the story. But I ended up, you know, just between you and I, the only way to get rid of a super rat is to get a gun and shoot them, which I did. Like, I mean, but we settled Soho. And the interesting thing was, I was 27 in 1977. I'm 64 now. And many people had gone into Soho before me. Many. But it was, for some reason, on the cusp. So that from 77 to 82, those 5 years, we had a lease for 5 years. Anyway, I guess the whole point of this, I won't go into the long and exciting story of victory. But how do you make relationships with landlords? When kids say, oh, you can't move to New York anymore, it's too expensive. Not if you do it illegally, it's not. And I feel like our whole, whatever that generation is, and I, you know, have my dancers in their 20s and 30s, and we have about 500 kids in the Slam Kids Action Show, so Kids Action School. And by the way, Slam is always open to the public. You can always come in and interrupt. Our notion is the two beautiful new ways of behaving is to invite interruption and strangers back into your studio where they came when you were just starting because you were nobody from nowhere. So you didn't get to have that kind of privacy. I think all of us who love the arts, this is an ad for Shackleton's Journey. I don't even know where I found it. But he put this in the paper, and it says, men wanted for hazardous journey. See, doesn't this sound like the art world? Small wages, bitter long months of constant danger, and complete darkness. Safe return doubtful. Honor and recognition in case of success. I thought, that's us. And he had so many people applying that he had to turn some away. But I was thinking, that's unlikely, but we do it. Here's Slam. That's my garage. In 2002, it was about my 7th garage after we we lost my loft in Soho, but I got another space across the hall. Because we wouldn't leave, that's why. We wouldn't leave. So, there you go. Another real estate victory. I mean, we were in court for 18 years, but separate from that. And that's the only reason that there aren't more artists in Soho, you know. So you have a garage. I decided the garage is sort of a complete model for where all the great things in America, in a way, in the United States, got invented. Why? Because you can wreck the space. Like, you can't go into a nice dance studio. Like, I did something the other day. I went to see a show at where was it? Someone's loft in Soho. And it said, take your shoes off. Like, every time I get to a door and there's a pile of shoes, I'm like, no. No, I'm not taking off my shoes. I spent all this time getting dressed. It's so ridiculous. Am I going to hurt your floor? It's wood. Like, our focus on the most unnecessary niceties. And I did feel really badly walking in there, but I did it anyway. This is my sister. We were both adopted. I was 2, she was 0. She was a little after 0. She got adopted. And we went opposite ways. She's really a member of the working poor, and I have enormous respect and regard for her bravery. This is Kane's factory, like thousands of other unwatched factories across America. It's in southern Michigan somewhere. And this is 5 in the morning, because she would have gotten fired, making $7 an hour. She stayed there 17 years, and now she makes, she retired, 10. And it breaks my heart. Look at her, she's smoking, there's flames coming out. Her idea for stable employment was she and only she, none of the guys, would work this machine called the ideal machine. Because you can see why. It's a contraption, and those shelves are shelves for Walmart. That's my model. My sister is my model. I'm not going to let you hear what I say there. But risky talking is another. So, when you think of your space, a lot of times we get spaces dumped on us, because we have to. Well, it's a theater, of course. Can't change that. Not to mention changing the rules of how you operate in the theater. But what if you started from scratch, and you just did kind of a odd exercise and said, well, what is my container model? Is it a church now, in 2014? Well, no, because remember in the old days, before any of us were alive, it was a sanctuary. If you were in trouble, you ran into the church at all times. Now they have hours. If you go into the church, which I try all the time, I run up to the door just to pretend I'm in trouble. And I pull the door, and it is locked. And I want you to know, they are not-for-profit organizations, and they are not operating publicly. So let's say your model is a 7-Eleven. Everything for everybody, whenever you want it or need it. And guess what 7-Eleven is? I mean, the church, I guess, has, certain they offer certain solace. I was raised Catholic, and I still refer to the parables that I was taught by the nuns up at Our Lady of Mercy High School in Rochester. So I'm not dissing religion at all. I'm just not happy I can't get into most of the churches, even in New York, that I walk by. But I thought, a 7-Eleven, I want that. I'm going to make a 7-Eleven. And what do I have that they would want? Everybody would want. In my garage that you saw kind of quote-unquote broom clean, which it wasn't really. And then you've got your space. I had a 10-year lease. Now we own it for other illegal things that I won't go into. But I thought, okay, what are my ingredients? What will STREB put in here? And the idea was I wanted STREB Extreme Action. I wanted Kids Action, because we've been working with Kids Action thanks to Mary MacArthur Griffin and Carlotta Schoolman, who did this residency in Northern Liberties, Philly, back then, and said the word. I think kids would really like to slam against the wall, so let's bring them in. And then I saw the kids slam against the wall, and I looked at my dancers, and I was like, hello. They're slamming harder than you. So I wanted kids action. Now we have over 500 kids in 58 classes a week, not talking about outdoors, and it's an earned income. Some of it is, some of it's scholarship. And I also wanted the circus. Why? Because they have hardware too. And I wanted some friendly idea in there that I could relate to. But here's the really amazing thing. We ignore each other completely. And because we're 30 feet high, other people, we have a rental program. So anyone who wants to hang comes to Slam. And so if you put the kids together in terms of just budget, fast track budget, if you take STREB out of my budget, and my budget is about $2.7 million a year, you take me out and leave all of the earned income separate from me, you have that we bring in $2,200,000 a year, and it costs us, which I think is a little high, $1,900,000 a year, and we end up with 200. I lose, I don't know, about 500,000 a year. I lose that. I thought you were going to get mad or something. I thought you were going to say, how could you possibly do that? But the beauty of that is that's what businesses did. A businessman told me, go do that, and then you say to the banks, because now our building's worth $5 million, and I can leverage my line of credit, because I own the building. If we have a drink late tonight, I'll tell you anything you want to know. But then I thought, well, every business leverages. If you saw in Rolling Stone, Matt Tabai, is that how you say his name? Was talking about what really happened at Morgan Chase. What really happened there. I'm not that criminal. I'm just a little criminal. So here are some of our rules of conduct that got us established there. Excuse me. And what we started to notice is, how do we change our habits? You know, how do I say, okay, no start times? Like at the Olympics, who knew? But at the end, there were 10,000 people in Trafalgar Square. Question duration. Like still, my agent will say it has to be an hour and a half. And I go, but action is episodic, not durational. I'm done. And like I make things shorter. And my dream is that my show would last 10 seconds. And then we'd be out of there. He goes, that's not going to work. That's not going to work. But this would be a list that anyone can make. You know, how do you attract people into a space? And what are the fabric, what is the fabric of your edifice? And our door is 16 feet wide. And I always thought, okay, I have 16 feet to get them to look in, and that's all the time I have. By the time they get to the door, will they feel they're invited, and will they walk in? And if it's action, you know, we're organizing things digitally. It's not linear. You know, I never really understood why people tell stories with action or try and express emotion, because I don't think movement lends itself to that. And then it goes into notions of the whole short blocks, a lot of turns. That's a Jane Jacobian thing. What is the definition of a public space? How do you congregate people, you know, of unlike minds and unlike ours? That's a Roberta Gratz. I mean, she's an urbanist, I guess. What you call Jane Jacobs, you call her a city planner, a urbanist, a visionary. I mean, so I'm trying to see, can I learn something from this? You know, what is public space? What exactly is it? How do you start your show? And what's the first experience? If you're going to trap people in a room and they're paying $40, $50 or less. This is a zip line, and we had to get a lot of permissions because we're flying over the audiences. And Rebecca Robinson at the Armory was really lenient with us and allowed us to do that. But it's pretty amazing. You're sitting down, and we're not dressed in Spider-Man suits or anything like that, but there is something amazing at a body flying over you. Like, that's not really, is that choreography? Or is that just constructing a condition that the people in your audience just have never been in before? This is another riddle. Did you know that? I asked Lisa about that, and she goes, Elizabeth, they're not really, it's not a test tube really. I said, well, isn't it really things you put things in? Isn't that a test tube? And she said, yes, but I said, don't tell me anymore. Now she'll say there's a problem with the plus sign or something.
Way over yonder is a place that I know, where I can find shelter.
How do you talk? And also, this is another thing we did to be able to do what you're looking at right now. My producers took me, I wanted to walk up St. Paul's Dome. And so I had to go meet with the bishops. And I was like, well, I should be okay at this, because I was raised Catholic, and I know how, I know how to, well, it was really 18 by the time I went to a state school, so I knew that liturgy, I believed in a lot of it. I like the parables. I think sometimes of, Gethsemane, when you're standing there alone and none of your friends will come. I mean, it's some beautiful, beautiful lessons that, for me, were mostly in the New Testament, and the nuns would say, you can't leave the other part out, Elizabeth. And I go, yes, I can. And this is, like, to have the bishops, well, they made me write an essay, and then they said no, which hurt my feelings. And I was going to call it Ascension. I think that's where I went wrong, so. But I visualized, like we were talking about earlier with Clay's comment about memory, like I visualized, to me, a cross is a perfect intersection of how our world is constructed. The vertical, the horizontal. And it implements everything in between. And yes, it's just a symbol, but I thought I would walk up the dome, maybe it would take a few hours. Going up buildings is harder than coming down them, and more expensive. And then I would walk up the cross like this, like every bit of the cross, I would walk till I got to the top, and then I'd be in a T and stare at the Thames. Like this, like that. And then I'd walk down again, and they didn't like that. So instead, we did this to walk down City Hall. But I had to ask the mayor if he minded, and also, could you clean the glass off so we don't slip? He ignored that. But when something is a monument in an urban environment, I believe that you couldn't, because some people think STREB's spectacle or we're acrobatic, and we really are not. We're really trying to dig into the anthropological essence of what is action, what are our experiences in our world for the action we've either perceived or been through, even the accidents. And how do you get a situation where it's extremely simple but necessary? Like, what is sufficient and what is necessary in regard to the choices when you're going on an icon like a Norman Foster building? Like, he does not need me. But how can I just use it as the most perfect frame that I could ever come upon? And what are the tickets? What is the hidden message behind all these tickets that we so blithely go? And I always think, even in New York, I won't name theaters, but I call them up and I'd like to go. Oh my gosh, it's so complex. Oh, the box office isn't open right now. I'm like, just called. Like, I'm busy, just call back tomorrow. Or you go to the theater and say, oh, I want to see a show next week, could I please? No, we don't sell tickets while another one's going on. I'm like, what? And I think we can reinvent how we invite people to what we do. And it would discombobulate a lot of things in place, I'm sorry. You know, it might offend. Remember that thing about, oh, these are the people that already come. Let's not get them to go away. Let's be, you know, a little bit tiptoe. No, no. Redo it. Let them go. But that is a classist system. And if we agree, I believe, because I got brought up, well, I think my real bloodline is royalty. I can't quite say it without choking. I think it's royalty. That's where I came from. And not knowing has been a huge advantage. But even when I cooked for a living, when I was a young person, young dancer, because that's how I made my money, a lot of my friends who, you know, we were in rehearsal, we're going to ballet, we're going to modern, and I'd be going off to the restaurant, and I'd say, where are you guys going to work? And they were like, they're not going to work. And it finally dawned on me quite, you know, after I'd been in New York 5 or 10 years, oh, some people really don't have to work. And that's okay. But I think privilege infects a lot of our choices. And the unraveling of that privilege has to happen. Has to happen if we want the whole congregation of human beings with us. And learning, we learn from them. We realize, oh, this doesn't work. Oh my gosh, you know, if you have to study something like dance for 20 years and you happen to be, you know, have a mother and they're not all wealthy, I realize I'm making a sweeping statement, but allow me to make a sweeping statement. A mother who took you to dance class every day, and then you look on the stage and you go, oh my gosh, they're performing the moves they do at the ballet bar. And I always thought modern dance, or even we study a lot of ballet, was about the invention of new vocabularies. But then I want to know why, if none of us were in the theater, but it was all everybody else, they would not see that as performing privilege. So here's Zaire Baptiste. He's my DJ VJ. We're in a big theater out in the Midwest, and I think it'll speak for itself. Oh, you have to turn your heads 45 degrees to the right, because I don't know why I tilted the camera. But it's another dance moment for all of you, right? Unless you can understand what he's saying when he's at that 45. Never mind.
Before we get started this afternoon, we have 2 requests for everyone in the building. I'm sure that you are familiar with theater protocol. Cell phones off, no cameras. Well, here at STREB, we demolish all of that. We want you to take out your cell phones, take pictures. We here believe in audience sovereignty. So, you do what you feel. Your phone rings, you answer it. You take pictures. You upload them to the internet. You go on Facebook. You let your friends know how much fun you're having. You go on Twitter. You let them know you're here with STREB. Can you do that for us, David? And our second request is that you make as much noise as you...
You get the drift, right? But it's really amazing because we need marketing, right? Why aren't people YouTubing, Twittering, you know, whatever all those other things are? Oh my gosh, you get thousands of people in there. So how do we really assumption boss? You really and notice what we're doing habitually, but don't pay attention to because it just must be done. I only have this long to raise this much money. I can't redo the box office system. You know, it's too expensive for people. I deeply disagree with that analysis. Deeply disagree. It's not about the money. It's about the will. So here's slam, and we like slam inclusive, so we just invite everybody up to the stage. And the only problem was getting them off after this piece was over. But how moving is it to see a cross-generational thing happen, which happens a lot at Slam. The kids like it, the parents like it. They're not afraid. It's not the parents that are afraid that the kids are going to get hurt. doing STREB pop action or just watching it. I sometimes look at a 2-year-old in our audience and think, are they going to pay attention? I want to watch, kind of barometrically. And guess what? It's like watching a shiny object. They just stare there like this. Someone said, well, they're sleeping. I go, no, they're not. Their eyes are open. Well, babies sleep with their eyes open sometimes. I go, no, they don't. Huh? I'm not a baby expert. Okay, so this is just an example of outside. So we're in the parks in Williamsburg. We have collaborations all over. And did you know this? If you drilled a tunnel straight through the earth and jumped in, it would take you exactly 42 minutes and 12 seconds to get to the other side. Sounds like fun, doesn't it? New partnerships. I wanted a flying trapeze and slam. That sort of was the first issue of mixing it up with circus. And we've been, Noe and Yvonne, Espana and I have been collaborating for about 20 years now, almost 20 years. And they've made a bunch of our equipment. And they still look like that, I want to say. It's kind of important to have gorgeous people, I think. I think action specialists are all beautiful. And here they are. They made it, right? Not like a theater designer, but they made it. They designed it, rather. They made it in their circus camp down in Florida. They put it on a flatbed. They drove it up here. I won't go through that whole thing, but if you come to slam, you can fly. How many people here would want to do a flying trapeze lesson? Well, there you go. I can just up my budget a little this year. We collaborate. Cirque du Soleil asked us to help them celebrate their 20th anniversary. It was in '04. So I thought they told me, how long it could be. Of course, there's music that. Can you turn that up, Tony, a little, please? There's 200,000 people on the street. It was their gift to Montreal. And what I was looking at as I wandered around, and this is just about grammar and syntax, like I came from this downtown, postmodern, and experimental dance world. And I thought, okay, I want to see, and I was willing to take the hit at the door, if when a Cirque piece ends and STREB starts, there'd be a universal groan from all the people on the street. Like, oh no, what's this? Art, yuck. But interestingly, they didn't notice. They didn't notice. And then I was able to do this analysis of, of what's the difference between circus and STREB, really. It's a lot of difference. We don't use equipment that is circus-esque because we would lose. In that sense, we're generalists. We're generalists, not specific people who wake up and learn the tightrope from the time they're 2. However, I realized, okay, so what's the difference? Our sentences are a little longer. Just a little longer. If there's our prepositions and conjunctions and maybe a verb every so often. Ours actually has a syntax, but it's pretty quick, it's pretty short. And then would that speak to, one, what the rhythm is? And if people see a flip, they dismiss that sometimes, but if you conjugate it with some other things, would that be, wow, not too long, because people don't look that long. So how does action become a conveyor of something that would really have content, would really be able to hold the content? How many people knew this? And I got this book in London, and I know it's true because there are 3 guys that wrote it. Oh my gosh, I just think it's so amazing. That's the horizon line. This is a Sugimoto photograph. But also asking a question, which are fairly formal questions. What is the vanishing point for action? Like we have to figure out, how do we put our action in places, at times, in moments that are able to demonstrate dimensionality, speed, force, the ingredients of action. And the visual art world figured that out, right? It's not like you have an agreement, an intellectual agreement that you put in the olden days before this was invented. You put a house here, and then the house above that house is, behind that house, and et cetera. And in dance, I'm sitting there thinking, you know, I'm very critical, thinking, wow, I know that people think that they're rushing from upstage to downstage, but they are the same size. And I do not feel they're falling into my lap. I bet you're sick of riddles at this point. Okay, I'll skip that one. When we were doing the Walker Arts Center, John Coles and Sage Coles, you know, had a real relationship with the Metrodome. And they asked us to do a piece right in the middle of it before the national anthem. And John Kalaki, who's just a great producer in the world, now he's up at the Flynn in Vermont, he said, you stay here, Elizabeth. You know, this is this massive field, right, the Metrodome in Minneapolis. He said, you stay here. I want you to see how big this is. I'm going to walk away. And then I go, well, John, I see how big it is. And he just started walking away. 10 minutes later, he's the same size. You know, I said, John, I get it. But he kept walking all the way to the end. And he did not disappear, did not. And then I realized, what am I going to do here when you've got 80,000 people in the stands? What will they notice? And then it occurred to me, well, they're looking at a baseball. So I thought, if we have the sound and you can hear the impact these dancers are making, it's going to work. And it really, really worked.
Here to celebrate the expansion of one of our city's most popular and revered institutions, the Whitney Museum of American Art.
Can we all have a living glass?
And as you can tell, and as you would expect,
Are they for
this is
sale?
not going to be your average groundbreaking.
Where?
In fact, it may be the most groundbreaking
Cool plan.
you'll ever see. Today, this area is, if you walk around, full of new hotels and shops and residential buildings.
This is what
And
Mara
we'll
was
say
mentioning
that
earlier,
Whitney
right?
really saw the potential
We were commissioned to do the Whitney groundbreaking, and I thought, oh my gosh, I'm so excited.
at the edge.
I want to really do this, really essentialist do this.
And let's not forget, this museum's roots are really downtown because the Whitney started, a little known fact, on 8th Street with a crazy idea that American art was something significant, not just the leftover ideas of a movement happening elsewhere. And that American artists had a unique way of seeing and engaging with their neighborhoods and with the world. And I think you can certainly say that about New Yorkers. Now, all of us who love New York and feed on the vitality of a place that is constantly in motion and always reinventing itself have a great appreciation for our city's unique
How many
blend
people
of
love
old
Bloomberg?
and new,
Anybody here?
traditional
Raise your
and
hand.
modern, past
Uh-oh.
and future. And all of these
I did
elements
love him,
will
I confess.
intersect and
Yes,
coexist
Sam.
in this very spot. And now to kick off the official groundbreaking of the new Whitney building, I give you Breaking Ground, a performance by internationally acclaimed and Brooklyn-based choreographer Elizabeth STREB and the STREB Extreme Action Company.
That was definitely a moment when I thought, when I walked into the center and I was like, oh, there's 700 of the richest people in New York City. This could be dark. But it's also interesting because if you preempt something, make a decision about something, well, you'll never find out. You've got to somehow go in there. And then just one more thing here.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Fall for Dance. As a courtesy to the artists and your fellow audience members, please be aware that the taking of photographs or the use of video and recording equipment during the performance is strictly prohibited by law. Please take a moment now to be sure your cell phone is switched to silent mode. Thank you and enjoy the performance.
Party poopers. So, to finally conclude, when we look back, oh my gosh, there's so much we could be doing. We are the fiber of this country. We really, absolutely prove that optimism is true social justice with the things that we do. And we have to somehow figure out how to make our work hit the other 300 million people in this country. I think it's time now for some questions. I want to thank you so much for your patient attention. Thanks. So the questions would be if people would come to the microphones, and do we have about 4 minutes or so, something like that, left for any questions you might have. They can even be, what the hell do you think you're doing? No, it could be, please stop, or anything like that. But I'd love to hear from you and hear maybe even if you, I don't know what questions you could have after that. Oh, maybe you would say, why? Yes. Who are my mentors? Well, a lot of the old slapstick people, Evel Knievel, Pole Sitter, Shipwreck Kelly, N.E.S. and Taylor, first one to go over Niagara in a barrel, la la la, all of those people. Three Stooges, things people hate, I loved. And then there's Charlie Chaplin, a little more, I don't know, what do you say, graceful and lyrical. I wasn't into that, because I actually think, anyway, never mind what I think, you just heard what I thought for a long time. And then in the dance world, I started at 17, so it would have been Maurice Cunningham, Trisha Brown especially, Lucinda Childs, and I really do like Bill T. Jones. I think that he does political art, but his action is also, not a new way to move, but it's powerful, and he's a great director. And I like Pina Bausch, but I think she's gender biased. I don't like those old-fashioned boy-girl things. I don't really like to see women get flung around on the stage. However, she is the greatest director almost that's ever been around. Over there? Oh, I have this really good slide. No. What'd you say over there? Oh, the question is, what is in your head right now that you haven't tried? I don't work like that, really, because I don't know. When we set up these odd things to experiment at SLAM, that means I'm done. We discover things, and I don't know what I'm going to find. So I really try and figure out how to watch carefully. And there's a whole issue about what you notice. And I think this explains that. The critical issue is, do you notice the event before it could occur or after? It's impossible to notice something before it happens, if it's a real move anyway. To notice it after the event occurs is too late. Then it's just a memory, and you've already made that decision to do it. If you do notice it before it happens, then it's not invention. To notice has to be a present tense, instantaneous activity. And that's why I can't really answer that question, but stay tuned, because, yeah. And yes, right there. No, and I don't have any plans. I would love to, but traveling, we travel with 30 tons of equipment. And if I'm doing something on cityscapes, it's we really want to, move across the Great Divide to do collaborations with corporations and cities and urban situations. My agent, who tours the Forces show that you saw, hasn't yet. We're going to Brazil in a couple months, but it's hard to get this stuff on a boat. But I would love to. I would love to find out what new audiences would think about that. I'll be around all night. I'm going to go to a lot of the other things, so please come up to me, stalk me, and I really appreciate your attention. Thank you, Tony, and thank you, Johnny. It was really great. Thank you. Thank you. I should do a back fall or something like that.